حي على الفلاح.
A man lowered in his bucket. Yusuf was startled by the bucket hurtling down and grabbed hold of it before it could land in the water. As the man began to pull, he felt the load unusually heavy, so he peeped into the well. What he saw shocked him. A youth was clinging to the rope. He held the rope tightly and shouted to his friends, "Better give me a hand, fella. Looks like I found a real treasure in the well." His companions rushed to the well and helped him to pull out the stranger holding on to the rope. Standing before them was a healthy, handsome youth beaming with an angelic smile. They saw him in a handsome prize, for money was all that mattered to them. Immediately, they clapped iron shackles on his feet and took him along to Egypt, far away from his beloved homeland of Canaan. All over the Egyptian city, the news spread that an unusual, handsome, robust young servant was on sale. People gathered by the hundreds at the market. Some were spectators, others were bidders. The elite and the rich and the auctioneer had a field day as the bidding went wild, each buyer trying to outbid the other. Eventually, he was bought by one who recognized his value, a man of power and prestige referred to in the Quran as Al-Aziz. It is said that he was a high-ranking official in charge of the Egyptian treasury. "Make his residence comfortable," he said to his wife. "Perhaps he will benefit us, or we will adopt him as a son." Yusuf was pleasantly surprised when the chief minister of Egypt ordered his men to remove the heavy shackles from his swollen feet. He was also surprised when he told Yusuf not to betray his trust. He would not be ill-treated if he behaved himself. Yusuf smiled at his benefactor, thanked him, and promised to be loyal. Yusuf felt at ease, for at last he was sheltered and would be well cared for. He thanked Allah over and over and wondered at the mysterious of life. Not so long ago, he had been cast into a deep, dark well with no hope of ever coming out alive. Next, he was rescued, then in iron shackles, and now he was moving freely in a luxurious mansion with enough food to enjoy. However, his heart ached with longing for his parents and brother Binyamin, and he would shed tears daily. And thus we established Yusuf in the land that we might teach him the interpretation of events. And Allah is predominant over his affair, but most of the people do not know. The brothers of Yusuf believed they had matters under control when they put their brother in the well, but in reality, the matter was out of their hands. Allah is the one in control of all affairs. Allah was decisive in his action, and his plan was carried out despite the treachery, jealousy, and pride of others. Yusuf found himself in the decision-making center of Egypt with a man who seemed kind and somehow aware of Yusuf's special qualities. While longing for his father and younger brother, Yusuf was well taken care of and lived in luxurious surroundings. Yusuf was made the personal attendant of the chief minister's wife. He was obedient and ever obliging. With his pleasant manners and charming behavior, he won everybody's heart. As Yusuf grew, Allah gave him wisdom and good judgment, and Minister Al-Aziz recognized these qualities in his loyal servant and therefore put him in charge of all household affairs. Yusuf grew into adulthood, both physically and spiritually, trained and guided by his Lord, who said, "And when Yusuf reached maturity, we gave him judgment and knowledge, and thus we reward the doers of good." Ibn Kathir described Yusuf as obedient, polite, and exceedingly handsome. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ also described Yusuf ﷺ and called him the embodiment of half of all beauty. Yusuf's handsomeness became the talk of the town. People referred to him as the most attractive man they had ever seen and wrote poetry about him. His face carried immaculate beauty, the purity of his inner soul, and his heart showed in his face, increasing his beauty. People from afar came to the city to have a glimpse of him, but not once did he show haughtiness or conceit. He was always humble and polite. The wife of the chief minister, Zulaikha, watched Yusuf from day to day. She would talk to him, listen to him, and her wonder increased over the passing of time. Zulaikha could not resist the handsome Yusuf, and her obsession with him caused her sleepless nights. She fell in love with him, and it was painful for her to be so close to a man, yet be unable to hold him. Yet she was not a wayward woman, for in her position, she could get any man she desired. By all accounts, she must have been a very attractive and intelligent lady, or why would the chief minister have chosen her of all the beautiful women in the kingdom? Although she bore him no child, he would not take another wife as he loved her passionately. And one day, unable to contain herself any longer, she maneuvered Yusuf into an empty room. Quickly, she closed the door. "Come you," she ordered him, as one orders a servant. "I seek the refuge of Allah," he exclaimed, horrified. His first thought was of Al-Aziz, who had taken him in and treated him with honor and kindness. "Indeed, he is my master, who has made good my residence. Indeed, wrongdoers will not succeed." Yusuf drove any thoughts of sleeping with the wife of his master from his mind, sought refuge with Allah, and attempted to remove himself from the complicated situation. Perhaps Yusuf had been resisting her advances for many years. A rich, beautiful woman from the highest echelons of Egyptian society would not stoop immediately to such behavior. Her beauty, status, and wealth meant that most men would succumb to her desires easily. Yusuf, however, was no ordinary man, and when he immediately turned to Allah for help, Allah rescued him. Yusuf turned to flee from Zulaikha. Yusuf's refusal only increased her passion. They both raced to the door, and as Zulaikha reached out for Yusuf, she tore his shirt from the back. Then, without warning, they found her husband at the door. The sly woman immediately changed her tone to anger and, showing the torn piece of the shirt in her hand, asked her husband, "What is the recompense for him who intended an evil design against your wife, except that he be put in prison or a painful torment?" She was now accusing Yusuf. To give the impression that she was innocent, though bewildered, Yusuf denied it. "It was she that sought to seduce me." The betrayed husband did not know whom to believe. Although Zulaikha was his wife, he knew her state of mind. At the same time, Yusuf alayhi salam's integrity and noble character were also known to him. Which of the two was telling the truth? The shirt passed from hand to hand while she watched. A witness from the household testified, pointing to the evidence of Yusuf's truthfulness. If his shirt is torn from the front, then she has told the truth, and he is of the liars. But if his shirt is torn from the back, then she has lied, and he is of the truthful. The proof was unmistakable. Yusuf's master was a wise, just man. He did not attempt to offend or exonerate Zulaikha simply because she was his wife. Rather, his interest was in determining the truth. When he saw the shirt was torn from the back, the disappointed husband remarked to his wife, "Surely it is a plot of you women. Certainly, mighty is your plot." And he turned to Yusuf and asked him to keep the matter quiet and pass over it as if it had not happened. And again, addressing Zulaikha, he said, "And my wife, ask forgiveness for your sin. Indeed, you were of the sinful." An incident like this cannot remain a secret in a house filled with servants, and the story spread like wildfire. Women began to see her behavior as scandalous. They remarked, "The wife of Al-Aziz is seeking to seduce her servant young man. Indeed, she loves him violently. Verily, we see her in plain error." This talk soon reached Zulaikha's ears. Because she was an experienced woman, skilled in dealing with the politics of the capital city, she was not one to be put down by the gossip of her peers. However, she was not one to submit to it in silence. Consequently, a subtle plan for teaching the women a lesson sprung in her mind. She planned to subject the women to the same temptation she faced. She invited them to a lavish banquet. No one so invited would want to miss the honor of dining with the chief minister's wife. Besides, they secretly harbored the desire to meet the handsome Yusuf face to face. Some of her close friends jokingly said they would come only if she introduced them to Yusuf. The invitation was restricted to ladies. The banquet began. Laughter and mirth abounded. Etiquette dictated that the ladies not mention the topic of Yusuf. They were shocked. Therefore, when Zulaikha opened the topic, "I have heard of those who say I have fallen in love with a young servant man, Yusuf," silence fell upon the banquet. At once, all the guests' hands stopped, and all their eyes fell on the chief minister's wife. She said, while giving orders for the fruit to be served, "I admit that he is a charming fellow. I do not deny that I love him. I have loved him for a long time." The confession of the chief minister's wife removed the tension among the ladies. After finishing their dinner, the guests began cutting their fruit. At that very moment, she summoned Yusuf to make his appearance. She then called Yusuf to come before them. As her servant, Yusuf had no choice but to obey. They looked up, saw his beauty, and forgot that they had knives in their hands. The women were so entranced by shape and form that they cut clear through their own flesh. They described Yusuf as a noble angel. The wife of Al-Aziz, confident and haughty, said to her guests triumphantly, "That is the one about whom you blamed me, and I certainly sought to seduce him, but he firmly refused." And changing to a menacing tone, she added, "And if he will not do what I order him, he will surely be imprisoned and will be of those debased." Yusuf stood before the wealthiest, most elegant ladies of the capital in all the purity of his innocent young manhood, with a face more beautiful than any in this world. And he called upon his Creator, "My Lord, prison is more to my liking than that to which they invite me, and if you do not avert from me their plan, I might incline towards them and thus be of the ignorant." Therefore Allah answered his invocation. That evening, Zulaikha convinced her husband that the only way to save her honor was to put Yusuf in prison. Otherwise, she would not be able to control herself or to safeguard her prestige. The chief minister knew Yusuf was absolutely innocent, that he was a young man of honor, a loyal servant, and he loved him for these reasons. It was not an easy decision for him to put an innocent man behind bars. However, he was left with no choice. He reasoned that Yusuf's honor would also be safeguarded if he was kept out of Zulaikha's sight. That night, with a heavy heart, the chief minister sent Yusuf to prison.